Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi, and welcome back to the latest episode of the ISO Show. In this episode, I'll be sharing all aspects of planning an ISO 14001 project without the overwhelm and confusion. Are you getting asked what your sustainability strategy is, either from employees or clients? Are you looking to help your business create a system for success, be kinder to the planet, and also improve your brand's reputation? Then we're going to talk about having an awesome plan to get you started. If your experience is frustration about wondering where to begin with ISO 14001 and trying to figure out how to go about getting certified, I want you to carry on listening to this episode, as it's all about how to plan your ISO 14001 project ready to start your sustainability journey. So if you're ready to implement an environmental management system to help reduce your company's damage to the planet, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Mel Blackmore, founder of Blackmores and the Isology Hub. And I've been helping businesses to create and build ISO systems for success over the past 15 years. If you're serious about creating a sustainable business, then it's time to put the strategy, systems, and processes in place to make it happen. Join me each week for candid conversation about practical and profitable ways to introduce systems into your business. Before we begin, if it's safe for you to do so, download our free ISO Standards Blueprint. This is going to be so helpful. It's going to be invaluable in helping you to plan, create and launch your EMS ready for getting certified. So the episode today is going to be talking all about the planning stage. So the blueprint is going to be really helpful for you to be able to complete that. Basically, it's like a checklist, a workbook for you to go through, for you to consider all aspects when you're planning your ISO project. So it's really worthwhile downloading that now if it's safe to do so. Obviously, not if you're driving a car or anything. You have to try and remember to do that whenever it is safe to do that. Right, so let's dive into today's episode on how to plan your ISO 14001 project to implement an EMS and get certified. So the aim of this stage within your project is to have a really crystal clear plan for your ISO system for success. So let's say you've chosen the ISO standard that you're looking to implement, and in this case it's ISO 14001. So you need to consider everything from the branding of it, and also establishing a place where everyone can have access to the system so that you can move on to the create stage of your ISO system. So before you begin, I think you need to set expectations. It's always advisable to look at why. So why are you doing this? It's important to get clear on why you want to achieve certification to an ISO standard. Is it because you've got a point to prove? Is it because clients are demanding it? Employees or other interested parties are demanding it? Or is it because you want to have a clear structure in place to act responsibly and do the right thing? Obviously, these are all valid reasons, but it's good to have a look at the business holistically and to look at your why, okay? Because that's the purpose, that's what's going to drive you and drive your success. The other thing that you need to do is look at what you've already got in place. So what are you starting with? So some businesses may have an environmental policy statement. They might already have some environmental initiatives across the business. They might have a sustainability committee or sustainability champions. They are all really great starting points, and it's worthwhile building on that and to be able to capture that and recognise what you've got already, okay? Especially if you're looking at building up a business case for implementing 14001. It'll be great if you've already got some of the foundations in place. Another example of that could be environmental legislation register. So you might already identify what your legislation is that your business needs to comply with, and you may have already identified that for environmental management. The next step is to look at your goals. Okay, so what's your ideal time frame for this project? Is it 3 months? 6 months, 12 months, or even a couple of years. Okay, there isn't any right or wrong answer here. It's what your business needs. But you also need to be realistic about the timescales. So, have you got time to create the system, launch it, gather evidence before an assessment? Or is certification not even on your radar, in which case you just simply need to build the system, launch it, and then make sure it's working effectively? Okay, so there are lots of things to take into consideration on timescales. We go into that in a lot more detail in the ISOlogy Hub. So once you've decided on those goals, it's worthwhile booking your certification assessment in advance. So that could be 6 months or 12 months from now, but that's going to be your end goal that you can actually work back from. Also, just have a think about, is this the right standard for you? Are there other standards that might be more beneficial? So yes, ISO 14001 is the most popular environmental standard globally, but are there other standards that could benefit your business instead, like an energy management standard if energy is the most significant environmental aspect and the biggest commercial cost for your business? There may be sector-specific standards such as ISO 2012-1 if you're in the events industry. Or if your strategy is very much focused on carbon neutrality, you may want to consider the carbon neutrality standard past 2060. So it's important that we get crystal clear on the purpose, the reason for doing this, and making sure that you're going to get the most out of it as you go ahead and implement the standard. Okay, and then finally, just decide on whether certification is the right choice for you. Okay. Most businesses do go for certification that implement ISO 14001. It's like, you're doing all of that work. Why not get the badge? Why not get the accreditation and all the benefits of the accolade that goes with it and all the marketing opportunities that come with that? So most businesses do, but some businesses don't. It may be because of financial restraints. It may be that actually if you're looking at getting certified for the entire organisation, it's just not cost effective for you. And that's absolutely fine. Again, it's what suits your business. So I think one of the key factors here really, when you're looking at the ISO standard, is identifying, what are your stakeholders looking for? Are they looking for some kind of reassurance from an environmental perspective? Are they looking for you to demonstrate through monitoring and measuring and metrics what your environmental credentials are? Are they just looking for the badge? So it's important that you recognise what your stakeholders are interested in so that you can meet their needs throughout the process. So along the way, it's good for you to identify what the operational weaknesses are within your organisation, because you may actually find that the environmental controls are going to be really beneficial to help to reduce overhead costs. And, so operational costs are a significant factor for many businesses. So have a look at that. Also, if there is a lack of compliance when it comes to environmental matters, so this could be on recycling, or if you're handling a lot of packaging, you might want to actually put controls in place to bring about some type of structure, systemization, so everybody's singing from the same song sheet and the standards are raised across the business. Also look at it from a sales and marketing perspective. Why is environmental management so attractive from a sales and marketing perspective? Again, this goes back to your interested parties and how you want to present your commitment to environmental management. Another factor which I've spoken about on a number of other podcasts on other standards is establishing the scope of your environmental management system. So what will it cover? Which locations? Services? Okay, so you don't have to have the entire organisation certified. You might want the EMS to cover the entire organisation, but you actually restrict the scope of certification to one location or certain services, and that could be due to financial reasons. But it's important to look at where the most significant impact is going to be by having an EMS. So there wouldn't be much point in just getting an office certified if you've got manufacturing locations that actually are a significant cost to the environment and to your business. It's a bit of an oversight really to not include them within scope. you definitely want to include them because that's where you're going to get the greatest gain from including them within your scope of certification. The next thing you need to look at in the planning stage is getting leadership buy-in. Okay, so you do need to validate your ISO initiative. Okay, you need to present the benefits and the return on investment of ISO 14001 to that leadership team. They need to understand what's in it for them, whether it's financial gain, reputational benefits, having improved systems and structure in place, having a clear roadmap for sustainability. So they're all some of the benefits, not all of the benefits. But what's the return on investment for your organisation? Okay, so if you're looking at implementing an ISO standard, you do need to take into consideration the costs. That's your time, effort, energy, and also if you're outsourcing services to a consultancy firm like Blackmores, it could be £8,000 to £15,000 depending on the size of the company. Or you may want to go for the ISOlogy Hub, which is a membership portal that may only cost you £70 a month. So again, you might just want to do that all in-house, and that's absolutely fine too. So just have a look at the return on investment, what you think the potential gains are. And I am actually going to be recording a podcast on the ROI on ISO 14001 in the coming months. So taking a step back, have a look at those timescales again and look at the resources that you've currently got in place and look at the resources that you could bring into the organisation to help you to meet your goals. So in terms of resources, I mentioned obviously about time and effort. So you really need to have a project sponsor, somebody who's going to champion the ISO 14001 project from the leadership team. Now that doesn't mean to say that they're going to be very active in terms of all of the doing, all of the tasks involved with implementing ISO 14001, but they do need to show up as a champion, as a sponsor for this change in the business. And this is to ensure that, if there is resistance along the way, that they've got your back, okay? And it's really important that it's communicated clearly across the organisation. If you are going to be implementing ISO 14001, it's really clear to send that message out from day one. Message, for example, from the CEO or the project sponsor saying that we're committed to reducing our environmental footprint and this is what we're doing about it. So rather than just paying lip service, we're actually practicing what we preach, and we're actually going to be implementing systems to improve our environmental footprint. And of course, you need a project lead. Okay, so that could be you. That's the person that's going to be pulling together all the policies, procedures, documentation, making it happen, looking at what your environmental footprint is, helping to set objectives, launching the management system, carrying out internal audits, and taking your business on this journey to environmental change. So again, there's lots of support in the ISOlogy Hub on this. If you are the project lead, there's lots of templates, checklists, downloads, and obviously video tutorials to help you every single step of the way. So you're not alone. It's worthwhile also considering who your closet ISO sustainability champions are as well. So quite often within a business, there are people that are really passionate about acting responsibly and doing the right thing and would love to volunteer to help you with this project. So try and seek those people out where possible. Because as the saying goes, more hands make light work. So yeah, it's definitely worthwhile getting them involved. And where possible, getting representation from across the business, across different functions, is really, really helpful. So it's worthwhile at this stage then, if you are thinking about making a commitment to implementing an EMS, to reach out to some certification bodies to get some quotes. So we'd only recommend getting quotes from accredited certification bodies. So in the UK, they're certification bodies that are accredited by UCAS, and you will know the difference because there will be a crown and a tick. So don't go with any cowboy certification bodies that only have a tick because they're not UCAS accredited. And for our international listeners, again, you'll have an accreditation body in your country as well that will accredit certification bodies that will then certify you. So I'd always ask them to provide a quote for you over a 3-year period, because once you've completed the assessment, your certificate is actually valid for 3 years. So that will include annual surveillance visits and also a recertification visit at the end of the 3-year period. Okay, so the quotes will vary from certification body to certification body. So if you're asking for a quote over a 3-year period for the assessment plus the ongoing surveillance visits, so you'll be able to make a comparison on a like-for-like basis. So the next stage then is to start to develop your project plan. So look at establishing the roles, responsibilities, and also accountabilities for people that are going to be involved in the project. Establish your key milestones as well within the project. And in the ISology Hub, we have templates to guide you along the way on this, on the key steps. And within the ISology Hub, we actually have 7 steps, and planning is just the first stage. So remember to consider the timescales for your project to include the assessment and also the time allowed for afterwards for actually getting a copy of the certificate, which could be several weeks after your assessment. So you need to take all of that into account from the initial gap analysis, from the discovery stage, right through to actually getting a copy of the certificate in your hand. So once you've done that, it's worthwhile thinking about the branding of your ISO system. So decide on how you want to position it within your organisation. Is it going to be integrated within another management system? So it's an integrated business management system. You might want to consider choosing a name for your system. So at Blackmores, we have a Blackmores management system. Some companies will call it a business management system. Others will personalise it more for their business based on their culture as well. So that's entirely up to you. You don't have to call it an environmental manual anymore. So have a little think about that, because it might be worthwhile engaging with your marketing team and communications people if you have those resources available to you. Because you also need to consider the branding, including, the colours, fonts, and making sure that the company logo is included on your documentation as well. And of course, your ISO 14001 management system does need a home. So think about where the system will live. Is it going to be on your SharePoint system, intranet, server, a wiki, or is it going to be based around a project management tool that you use within the business like Asana or Monday.com? Again, it's entirely up to you. But the key thing here is to make sure that it's easily accessible and it's not too difficult. It's really easy to get access to it and to follow it and to comply with it. So just have a think about how employees can access the system. So not everybody may have access to online systems. So just have a little think about that, because we have come across companies that will have worksheets next to pieces of machinery, for example, or recycling posters at the recycling station. So just have a little think about that and making sure that it's easily accessible to all. And also have a little think about engagement. So when we go on to the launch stage, which is something that we do in the ISology Hub, and it's something I'm going to be talking about on another podcast, we look at different ways to drive momentum, to encourage feedback and to make it fun. Because at the end of the day, you don't want people to think that this is just a tick box exercise. You want them to feel involved and to be part of your environmental movement as an organisation. So just have a think about what you'd like employees to get out of the system as well. Because at the end of the day, it's their management system and you want them to be empowered to take responsibility for it. So in terms of the final stages of planning, it's worthwhile considering a communications plan. So thinking about what you want to communicate, how you're going to do that, when and with whom. Okay, so this can cut across from leadership management through to your sustainability champions. You might want to think about communication initially at the beginning of the project, but then you might also want to consider about having launch communications and also communications once you've actually achieved certification when you're celebrating your success. So have a little think about some of those aspects, including brainstorming ideas for your launch, okay, and how you can get employees involved with that. So finally, I think, one word of advice would be to get a copy of the ISO standard. So it's worthwhile knowing what the specification actually includes. Now, of course, over in the ISOlogy Hub, we do have lots of information on the ISO standard, including training courses on ISO 14001, but it's really useful to have a copy of that standard, so you've got that as a point of reference. And I'd also look at reviewing your company policies and procedures against the requirements of that standard, okay? Because, as I mentioned earlier on, it's really good to see what you've already got in place. But you might have an environmental policy, but it doesn't actually meet the requirements of the standard. So this is a good starting point before you actually embark on a gap analysis, because ultimately the gap analysis will drill down into a lot more detail about your compliance with the ISO 14001 standard. So this will enable you to provide an action plan with responsibilities and also timelines for the completion of those tasks. So hopefully that's been helpful in understanding what's involved just at the planning stage of introducing an environmental management system. So I really hope that that's been useful for you. If you love this episode and think, yep, I need to implement ISO 14001, but would like a little bit of help, then I just want you to know that the ISOlogy Hub is now live. So we've spent months creating it as a result of a sustainable innovation grant that was provided to us by the UK government, and we had full endorsement that this was going to be a game changer, which was why we got their support. So absolutely delighted that the ISOlogy Hub is now live. So all the resources that you need on ISO 14001 are over there. So join us to get access to all the support that you need on our online membership portal. It is the go-to place for all things ISO. We've got video tutorials, check sheets, quick wins, e-learning courses, you name it, everything you need to create and launch and build your ISO system for success. Well, I hope you've gleaned some useful information from today's episode, and I'd love to hear what your big takeaway was from today. Were there any areas that really resonated with you, or anything that you found that was particularly helpful? These sorts of things are really useful for me to know moving forward as I go through on planning stages for other ISO standards, and will be helpful for our ISO listeners. So please do share your comments on the player that you listen to, or just drop me a line as well. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget that the show notes for today's episode are over on the isologyhub.com. And also, if you don't want to miss any future episodes, please make sure you're subscribed with your player, whether that's iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. We're on all of the main players. So don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And finally, don't forget to download your free ISO Standards Blueprint to get your EMS kickstarted. So that's all from me for today. Thanks very much for listening to the ISO show, and I really look forward to catching up with you again next week.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.